Hi, peace. It's Bronzebird here with another video. Before I begin, like and subscribe. Thank you. So, I definitely wanted to give a little bit of commentary into this new trend, this conversation that people have been having for a while. Things that I saw via social media, in which I really have some certain opinions on this because will it affect the workload? Will it affect the world of living? Is this all just a psyop mission to change the workforce and to change the outlook of working? I don't know. We are definitely experiencing a time where we're coming into inflation, where we're coming into a world where things is different for the everyday American consumer. And obviously, we all know that when it comes to people in this world, most people survive by paycheck, survive week to week by, surviving off of moving around and stuff like that. But one thing that I definitely wanted to mention in this video that I found very remarkable, I guess, this concept of quiet quitting, in which I had stumbled upon this a couple of months back with this guy that basically broke down what quiet quitting is. Quiet quitting, the concept of, working just enough to get by, working not too hard, in a nutshell, not working so hard and not working too little, kind of just like trying to, exert their energy into not really doing too much of their performance, but doing less production when it comes to work. In my honest opinion, America does stall. The American culture when it comes to work definitely is more intense than, let's say, certain other places around the world where they allow employees to take naps, they allow employees to have an extended lunch break. In America, depending on how many hours you're working, I mean, the standard is usually 8 hours, 9 to 5. And usually you're getting an hour lunch or you're getting two 15s and a 30. I mean, it's a lot of different ways they did it, 6 hours. I remember the whole entire thing when it came to that whole entire workforce. But quiet quitting set upon a lot of employers to pay attention and then do something called quiet firing. So I'm going to take a look at this video. You guys watch it with me. I'll give my commentary along the way. So, Pete.
Buzzword has sparked the debate about the workplace, quiet quitting, and now you have quiet firing. They're fueling a conversation about work life balance and beyond.
Columnist Carla Miller covers work dramas, traumas, and trends for the Washington Post, and she joined us now to break it all down for us. This is really interesting. So tell us exactly what is quiet quitting, and why do employers see it as a problem?
Good morning. Well, quiet quitting is not really a new concept. It refers to doing your job no more and no less, not going above and beyond what you would normally do. And the problem with that is that many people, a lot of employers interpret that as sandbagging, phoning it in, doing less than an honest day's work for an honest day's pay.
Well, some people.
And to say something to that about quiet quitting, this is the thing. If I am to work in that type of company, in that type of environment, I'm not going to tell my employer that I'm quiet quitting. I mean, I think the dumbest thing that I've ever seen recently, there was this Amazon fulfillment warehouse out in Staten Island, and it was like, so-called black man, speaking to the public. And I think it was, I mean, I didn't get a chance to really view that video, but having a conversation about quiet quitting, you're not supposed to tell people you're quiet quitting. You're just supposed to do the quiet quitting, and the employer is not. I guess intentionally, it's kind of working those type of things where you're doing something intentionally, but unintentionally to have the employer be mad at you. I mean, that's the thing that I'm kind of picking up from this concept of quiet quitting. So I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like maybe I'm right, but it's just like it's great.
I've criticized the idea of quiet quitting. So, have some people push back on that definition, or how do they see quiet quitting? Because some say, "Hey, if you're paying me a certain salary, I'm doing the
I'm
job.
doing the job
That's
I'm
all I
supposed
need
to
to
do.
do.
Yeah, why do I have to go above and beyond all the time? Because you're not paying
You're not
me
paying
to
me
go,
more to go
right?
above and beyond."
That's
I mean, like obviously, if it's something like overtime and you don't want to do overtime, I mean, quiet quitting, I guess, would be relative to that. I mean, if you don't want to do overtime at your job because you're tired and all that other stuff, like I get that. That makes sense. You want to be able to go home after you work like an 8-hour day. If you're working part-time, maybe you got something on the side. Maybe you're hustling and juggling 2, 3 jobs at max. So, your productivity being based on how many jobs you work or how many hours you work would attribute to the quiet quitting concept. But at the same time, let's just say you are working one job from 9 to 5, you're getting paid a good salary. Um, Quiet quitting, like I said, you're not supposed to, in my view, you're not supposed to let someone know that you're quiet quitting. Definitely not supposed to go on social media. And this is the thing, employers definitely pay attention to what employees are talking about and what employees are following what trends. They stay in tune just like you stay in tune. And especially now when we're talking about the good old surveillance state, it would make sense now. You get that?
Right. A lot of folks are saying quiet quitting just means I'm not going to be available around the clock. I'm not going to be answering phone calls and emails after hours or texts. I'm going to turn off my Slack at the end of my workday. I'm going to put in my 40 hours, and then I'm going to live the rest of my life. They're trying to.
And that's perfectly fine. And I have no problem with that. In terms of that quiet quitting, I agree. The thing about it is you set boundaries. But what if that starts to become the massive status quo of all employers? And you have a bunch of them that just do not take a risk. Of course, there's going to be some questions involved. But the most things that I have to say to this type of video, this concept, will quiet quitting enable more of the mass layoff? That's one thing that I start to mention, especially because you see those guys from Amazon, and it seems as if Amazon has a very big problem with their employees when working there. Like, and it seems like Amazon overworks their employees. Maybe it's just me, but sometimes I see that. I'm just like, wow.
Get recentered and find some balance in their daily lives.
So it might not necessarily be a bad thing in some cultures, maybe in other countries. Like that's what they encourage people to do to actually be happy. But that might be a whole other thing. So let's talk about boundaries. Some people have brought up the practice of quiet firing. So that's a little bit different. So what is quiet firing?
Before she begins, the only thing is quiet firing is a reaction to quiet quitting. Oh, so you don't really want to work as hard? Okay, so we're just gonna, do something to your salary. We're gonna make sure that you don't do this, you don't do that. Okay, no, it goes great. You can have your time, but we're gonna have our time too. So it enforces this policy of like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So if you don't really want to work as hard, we'll give you a reason not to work as hard. That's perfectly fine. We'll lower your checks. We'll lower how much you get paid. We'll do little savage stuff to make sure that you have a great time quiet quitting. So that the person just be like, oh, this job is making me feel stressed out. I should quit. Or try to find a way of actually firing them.
Well, like quiet quitting, quiet firing isn't exactly new. It's the practice of sort of passive aggressively not doing right by your employees, doing less for your employees, maybe not giving them raises, not giving them clear instructions, giving them poor feedback when they've done a good job, and just generally making the workplace uncomfortable and intolerable for them until they decide to quit rather than.
And that is such a toxic thing to do. I mean, like, yo, and you wonder why so many people do not want to work. Like it's, oh man, just hearing this stuff, it's just like you got so many people that go in went into the great resignation. And then there's the other ones that just was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and start my own business. You know what I mean? And I honor people out there that started their own business. I think everybody should aspire to be, but I mean, what if you are that business that has your employees and they trying to quiet quit on you?
And firing them outright.
Yeah, because if they quit, you don't probably not have to pay them severance and things of that nature. I'll tell you, I think I've been quiet fired before.
Really?
Yeah, they were giving me like double the work and then just really negative to the point where I was like, I just want to leave.
Well, here's what's interesting. I wonder if the employees that are quietly quitting are getting backlash from their employers who are going to quietly fire them because they're both kind of doing the same thing.
Someone's got to be
passive aggressively, but who has more of the power? The quiet quitter or the quiet fire? The quiet fire, because the fact of the matter, they're the ones that employed you. So at the end of the day, those are the ones that have the last say so, because those are the ones that signing your check, direct depositing your check every 2 weeks or every week, depending on where you work. So I mean, it's the tit for tat. but the tactic seems to be in void depending on the situation. I mean, my honest thing is, if I feel too overwhelmed with work, I'm more liable to go ahead and find another job and to work there to see if the practices is better. But in my planning, I would like only to like own my own business. You know what I'm saying? Or get into that involved instead because it's less stress, it's less all these different things. And maybe a lot of people is not meant for it. That's why I start to analyze even on a social dynamic, is everybody prepped to be a worker? Or I mean, in this time, 2022, is it more legible for you to have your own business and to work on your own? That's a question you should ask yourself. I mean, talent, whatever you're good at, and all these different things, especially here on YouTube, definitely thousands upon thousands of pages that let you know how to start your own business. But if you are one that still wants to work to provide for yourself, pay for the bills, there's nothing wrong with that either. I definitely believe everybody should, you know, go to the beat of their own drum. Whatever works for you and whatever you feel is comfortable for you, that's what you should do.
Loud here. Just saying. Are these pandemic related issues or just new terms for an old practice?
Well, these are not new concepts. People have been setting boundaries, phoning it in, for years, and companies have been quiet firing people for years. If you think back to the movie Office Space,
Yeah.
and you think about Milton, who got shuffled to the basement, that's sort of a quiet firing situation. So it's really not new. But the point is that with the pandemic, more people, as they were working remotely, had time at home to sort of think about, what am I doing with my job? What kind of place does work take in my life, and how much of my life do I want it to take up? And
Well, that introduces the concept of the whole entire work from home dynamic, which the pandemic basically did, in which they made it an option for employees to go ahead and work from home, which instead keeps people inside. I think there's a lot of things that happen with the whole entire, not necessarily the quiet quitting type of concept, but the whole entire thing of work from home. You do the same amount of hours you would if you traveled to work, but in your house. That keeps you trapped in the house. And especially if you're full time, you spend all day on a computer from 9 to 5, and then you have a social life. I mean, there's pros and cons, but I usually view it as a con because a person like me, I don't want to be strapped in my house all day. I want to be able to go out, make my own hours, not be strapped down to looking at my laptop screen all day long, or look at my desktop screen all day long, or look at my phone or my tablet all day long. So there's definitely different ways that you can, conceptualize the whole entire concept of work from home, remote working, and all these different things. But I believe people should choose their hours. If you don't want to work 8 hours a day from remote work, hey, say, yo, I want to work 6 to 7, but just make sure that the pay agrees with that. Because who would want to work from home? You only getting paid 13 an hour, 12 an hour, and you live in a metropolitan area where rent is skyrocketing, and the average rent could be like 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, hopefully lower than that. But most than likely, you have high rent living in these different places. So it has to match up with what you're getting paid. You know what I'm saying?
they started thinking more and more about boundaries. You don't have that commute to deal with. You don't have those other non-work related things that sort of crop up with your job.
Right.
And once you've not had to deal with that, then you're kind of reluctant to go back to that life.
Right, right. So what can employers do?
Like I said, pros and cons, but if you really listen to what this lady is saying, this is going to involve the future of the workforce, in which it's going to go ahead and enable all these real estate developers and more of this construction plans. And y'all not going to hear me now, but I'm pretty sure you're going to hear me later. It's going to go into the concept of smart cities, being able to work around the neighborhood that you live in, so you don't have to leave. Everything is before you. Everything that you need is only in that area, so you don't need to go nowhere. You don't have to explore no new lands. You don't have to go to downtown or anything. You stay right in the area you're in. That's just something to think about.
If they're worried that their employees are quiet quitting.
The first thing I would suggest employers do if they're worried about quiet quitting is ask themselves, are the employees getting the job done? Are they doing what we're paying them to do? And how am I measuring that? Am I looking at the output of what they're doing? Or am I looking at how many meetings they've had this week, or how much time I've seen them on video? You know, how many emails they've sent? Is that really related to the work that they're doing? And is it having an impact on their output? So find a way to sort of look at and measure the output of their actual work, and then decide if you're getting less than you're paying for.
What about
Well, this is the thing as well. The employers usually do want those people out there that will volunteer to stay overtime and be able to get the extra work done. Just let's say in an average week load of work or an average 8 hour a day amount of work. Will they be willing to stay overtime just a little bit to make sure everything is done for the status quo of the day? Or is there going to be problems? Because that's what they're looking for as well. Those that's going to be going to and beyond because they want that extra money for an hour or 2 hours. So that's, it's one of those things that I also like to think about when phrasing this whole entire phrase of quiet quitting before we get into the whole entire idea of quiet firing. It's funny.
on the reverse side of this? What can workers do if they think, hey, maybe I'm on the end of the quiet firing?
The first thing, again, would be to sort of examine yourself and say, well, am I underperforming? Am I not doing what they've asked me to do? Then I would go to my manager and say, can you give me some hard definitions for what you want me to do, some benchmarks, some way to measure my performance? Because I really do want to do well. I want to perform well.
Well, I mean, my whole entire thing is there such thing as having a rapport with your boss, your manager, supervisor, where you guys can sit down and have a meeting? You don't express anything that has to do with quiet quitting or quiet firing, but you go to them and you say, hey, look, listen, I feel like, it's a lot of workload for me. I really want to stay in this company, but, I would like to give my best performance, but sometimes I feel overwhelmed. Is there a way to lessen the workload? Is there different things that I could do in order to keep this job, but, have a little bit more comfort while I'm working here? I mean, there's always conversations that could be had, but of course, you don't mention the idea of being quiet quitted or quiet firing. I mean, usually when it comes to workforces, I believe a lot of them play these games. A lot of them just play this whole entire thing to make it a place where there is no emotions in these type of work environments. Nobody cares. It's about getting the workload done. Corporate America has always been like that. They're just like, hey, look, listen, we pay you for this. Make sure you do the work for this, and then you get to go home and go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And more specifically, looking at blue collar work, they will never stop attempting to make sure that someone is going to go overtime and all these different things to say, well, hey, you got work, so you got to do what you got to do. But to each his own.
And if they still are not giving you that information and you still get the feeling you're being pushed out, maybe start looking around for other jobs within the company or outside the company.
Yeah,
Bingo.
it seems like communication is everything. Like as an employee, if you're feeling undervalued or being taken advantage of, you can quietly quit and just like pull back, or you could go and say, hey, you have to kind of like have a conversation.
Well, my mindset is if that type of thing happens and I'm really not feeling anymore, I mean, the mindset is, yeah, quiet quit. But obviously my mind is geared towards finding a new employment, new job, new place to work and all that other stuff. If I have enough money, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, if I have the amount that I need that get me over for a couple of months and things like that, I probably start looking at, side businesses, or if I'm not, I probably would already have a side business and all that already. Like, but I would just be like, okay, well, I'm going to start my own business or I'm going to start my own side hustle. I mean, everybody, I think, in America should have a side hustle. Just so you have that extra money on the side. And hey, if anything, have like several so that you can gain as much as you need. But, the rat race is getting to everybody in this time. And I think America knows that. I think just any developed country in the world knows that the rat race is getting to people. And a lot of people is questioning the workforce. What is the point of working all these hours where I don't feel like myself? I'm slaving myself out. I'm getting paid to pay the bills, but what is it doing for me mentally? How am I being able to just go on the brinks of being myself without having to do this? So it's a good conversation.
It's being passive versus being proactive, and I think both sides can work on that and work on being more transparent and honest about what they want and what they're willing to give.
In a
But is these employers wanting to be transparent, or do they actually want to listen to you, or they say, get that work done? Something to think about. Peace.